All right, welcome to this first tutorial we're doing on getting started with landmarks. So, if you're watching this video, you're probably looking for a 3D solution for navigation experiments, and someone either told you about landmarks or you came across it on GitHub or my page. So, to get started here, we're gonna go to github.com, make sure that you have an account created. Here I'm logged in on a test account called LM that I'll be using to test out these features. And then you can just search for the landmarks repository here, which is a public repository. So let's look for mjstarrett/landmarks. And here we are. All right, so Landmarks is free open source software. It is essentially a Unity project that comes bundled with all the dependencies as well as the Landmarks package. Um, Now, you can just click here and download a zip file of Landmarks, but I would recommend not doing it that way because then you essentially just have an instance of Landmarks and you will have to do some extra work or lose your own work if you ever want to pull updates from Landmarks, which get pushed fairly regularly. So instead of downloading the zip, you're going to want to have this GitHub account so that you can then synchronize your work and use Git version control to stay up to date with your own work, as well as any updates myself or other developers are pushing to Landmarks. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is fork and then clone the repository. And so in order to fork from this page, you just go up and click fork here. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a duplicate of the repository in my account, in this case, LM demo here. Um, and so if we look, we can see that it's forked from MJ Starrett landmarks. So now that we've forked, we're going to clone that to our local machine. Right now, we've created our repository, our version of the repository, known as our fork, and now we need to clone that to our machine so that we can actually work on it locally. All right, so I'm using a Mac here, so I'm going to be doing that using Terminal. You can find Terminal if you go to Finder, Applications, Utilities. Terminal app should be in there. All right, now my terminal is going to look a little different. I have, instead of bash, I'm using ZSH here, and I have oh my ZSH set up. But don't worry about that if your terminal looks different. I'll attach a link if you're interested in looking at how to use oh my ZSH. But the commands are all the same. So if you go ahead and open the terminal app here, and then we're going to clone it to the desktop. You can clone it wherever you want to go, but we're just going to change to that directory using the cd command. Desktop. All right. If you're using Windows, which maybe I'll post a Windows tutorial here, but you'll need to download Git for Windows, specifically Git Bash. And so once you have that, if you right click on the desktop, you'll see an option that will say Git Bash here. And if you click that, it will open a window similar to what I have here. And it'll use the same commands, and then you can clone that to the desktop. Now, if you are using Mac here, you'll want to make sure that you go to the App Store and have command line tools installed. So you'll want to install Xcode from the App Store, and then you can try to remember the command here. You can do that. Here we go. Here's the code. All right, so here it's going to tell me that command line tools are already installed. If you didn't have them installed, that would install them there. Once you've done that, though, you're all set. So we can go back to the GitHub page, and remember you want to be on your fork of the landmarks repository. And now, instead of clicking that download, we're going to copy this URL. My magic mouse will cooperate here. So then we go back here and we want to clone it so that the project folder is stored on the desktop. We're going to say git clone, and then you can see that we're at GitHub, but instead of at my repository mjstarrett/landmarks.git, it's on lmdemo. So your username would be there in place of lmdemo. Click enter, and it's going to clone. You see it created the folder here. And once that's cloned in, you'll be able to work in landmarks and then subsequently update your version of landmarks as well as push features to landmarks. So I already happen to have landmarks in another location on this machine, so I'll just go ahead and open that to show you. So landmarks generally uses the most recent version of Unity from the prior calendar year. So when I'm making this video, it's 2020. And the most recent release of Unity is 2019.3.7 F1. So right now that's what landmarks runs in. You'll want to stick as close as possible to the version that we're using. It's easy enough to update, and lots of versions of Unity get released each year. But just try to stay on track with where we are. Definitely you don't want to go ahead of where landmarks is. So once you install that version of Unity, here I'm using the Unity hub, so you can go to installs. If you don't already have it installed, you can click add, and if that's the most recent version, which right now it is, it'll be there. Otherwise, you can go to the Unity download archive and find the version that we're working on. If you're not sure which version of landmarks you're working with, then I'll go to the location that I have installed here. Then you can go into project settings, project version.txt, and it'll tell you. So you just open that text file and look for the version of Unity that we're using here. All right, so then we can go to projects and we can go ahead and open landmarks once it's cloned in here. So especially if it's the first time that you're opening landmarks in Unity, the project may take a while to import all of the necessary assets. It won't take this long each time that you open landmarks in Unity. So you just have to bear with it. All right, so opened up here, clear any errors. And so just really briefly here, I'll save some of the more advanced stuff for a different tutorial. So you can see that this is an entire Unity project here. Here's the actual landmarks package. And so in there, you can see we already have one of our scenes open, the simple sample 50 by 50, which, as the name implies, it's a small 50 by 50 meter arena with some target objects in it. All of these other things outside the landmarks package, these other assets, these are all assets that landmarks depends on. So for example, Steam VR, Oculus, those are if you want to do VR applications, you'll need those. So we have them in there already for you. Any free assets like the Unity standard assets are in there. But the great thing about landmarks is once you open it up here, if you open simple sample, it already has itself set up. You just click play, and you get a basic hello and goodbye from it. The other sample that comes with it right now is a sample experiment. So in this one, you go into scenes, the experiment is demo because that's what we're doing here. And you open demo simple sample. Um, and if we go ahead and hit play there, so it's the same arena, it's got the same objects, but what I've done is just dragged and dropped in a learn targets task, which here you can see is us learning the targets that we're gonna navigate to, and then a navigation task where we actually navigate to those targets. And I'm just going to speed this up here. Perfect. So once we navigate to all those targets, we get that end message we saw in the simple sample I showed you first. So that's landmarks. Going from the first example I showed you to this one is literally just dragging and dropping two items, those two tasks that we added to it. It takes seconds to do, and I'll show you guys how to do that in a later tutorial. But for now, that should be everything you need to get set up, synchronized with Git, and I'll do some other Git tutorials to show people how to kind of do the basic features and stay up to date and work on their own version of landmarks if they want to create their own experiments. All right, see you next.